The Power of Choosing You. Introduction. There comes a moment in every life when the noise fades. The masks fall away, and a quiet, undeniable voice inside whispers, "Choose yourself." The power of choosing you is that invitation to stop shrinking, stop waiting, and stop surrendering your soul to the expectations, fears, and doubts that have long held you captive. It's the call to reclaim your inner fire, rewrite your story, and rise with fierce clarity and compassion. Rooted in real stories, spiritual wisdom, and psychological insight, this book meets you where you are, whether you're lost in overwhelm, battling self-doubt, or simply yearning for more meaning, and gently, yet boldly, guides you toward a life built on your terms. Each chapter unfolds like a conversation with your truest self, blending raw vulnerability, grounded motivation, and timeless truths so that every page feels alive, personal, and full of possibility. Here, you won't find quick fixes or cliches, but a profound journey of healing, courage, and radical self-love designed to transform the way you see yourself and the world. Because choosing you is the most powerful act of freedom you'll ever take. Are you ready to step into that power? Chapter 1. The moment you decide. It usually happens in the smallest of moments. Not under the glow of a stage light or in the middle of a viral breakthrough, but on a Tuesday morning when you're sitting in your car before work, forehead against the steering wheel, whispering to yourself, "I'm done living small," while your coffee goes cold in the cup holder and your chest tightens from a lifetime of shrinking, people-pleasing, and pretending you're fine when you're breaking. Because there's a moment when the world goes silent and you realize that no one is coming to rescue you. No one is going to give you the permission slip you've been waiting for to become the person you dream about at night. And in that hush, you feel your soul stand up quietly, like a child tired of waiting to be picked up after school, and it says, "Choose me now." And you know in your bones that you are either going to keep repeating the same patterns of exhaustion and silent resentment, or you're going to burn down the parts of your life built on the expectations of others so you can finally come home to yourself. And it's terrifying because no one tells you that choosing yourself feels like grief at first. Grief for the years you abandoned your own needs to avoid conflict, for the ways you said yes when your whole body screamed no, for the dreams you buried under practicality and fear of judgment, for the younger version of you who thought sacrificing your happiness was the way to be loved. And maybe you think you need a bigger sign to change your life, a crisis, a diagnosis, a breakdown. But the truth is, the revolution begins in that quiet moment you decide you will not betray yourself again. And it doesn't matter if you don't know what the next step is. It doesn't matter if your hands are shaking as you type the resignation email or say the first no you've ever said without adding an apology after. It doesn't matter if people around you don't understand, because that moment you choose yourself is the moment your real life begins. And it is the moment you stop living as a shadow in your own story, and you start to become the person you would admire if you met them. Because the power is not in some grand somatic gesture, but in the sacred promise you make to yourself. When you whisper, "Never again," and mean it. When you promise to no longer be the one who abandons yourself. When you decide to wake up every day and ask, "What does choosing myself look like today?" Even if the answer is messy, imperfect, or scares you. Because the truth is, the moment you decide is a doorway, and you don't have to know what's on the other side to walk through it. You just have to trust that whatever waits there is better than living half alive in a life you didn't consciously choose. And when you step through that doorway, you might lose people who loved a version of you who made herself smaller for their comfort. You might lose the illusion of certainty. You might lose the fake peace that comes from being quiet to keep the water still. But what you gain is yourself, your voice, your energy, your dreams, your clarity, your peace. And you will find that nothing is more powerful than the moment you decide. Truly decide that you are worthy of your own devotion, that you are worthy of building a life that feels like yours, that you are worthy of walking away from whatever shrinks you, and you realize that choosing yourself is not a one-time decision, but 1,000 tiny choices each day to honor your truth. And each of those choices is a seed you plant in the soil of your future, growing into a life where you wake up, look in the mirror, and see someone you respect staring back, someone who chose herself. And in that quiet, private victory, you will find a freedom deeper than anything the world can give you. And you will know, finally, that you are free. Chapter 2. The Death by 1,000 Suppressions. How many times have you silenced your desires to keep the peace, biting back your truth until your spirit felt like it was wrapped in barbed wire you could no longer see, but felt every time you swallowed your needs to protect someone else's comfort? It starts small. You say, "It's fine," when it's not. You take on that extra task you didn't want. You smile when you feel like screaming, telling yourself you're strong enough to hold it in. And with each moment, you trade a piece of yourself for the illusion of keeping things calm, for the illusion that you will be loved more if you stay small and silent. But what if I told you these small silences are the real storm that slowly drowns you? We grow up learning that love means sacrificing ourselves, that goodness means being agreeable, that worthiness means earning approval by shrinking who we are. And so we suppress the laugh that is too loud, the dream that feels too bold, the boundary that might inconvenience someone else, until one day we wake up heavy with an exhaustion that sleep can't fix, carrying the weight of unspoken words, unexplored dreams, and unlived truths that collect like silent grief in the body, leaking out as anxiety, resentment, or that numbness you feel when you stare at the ceiling, wondering where your life has gone while you kept others' worlds spinning. And the worst part is, you get so good at suppression that you call it coping or being easygoing, while your inner world screams to be heard, asking you, when will you choose you? Choosing yourself doesn't always look like grand rebellion. Sometimes it is whispering no in a room that expects your yes, allowing yourself to take a deep breath before responding, letting yourself feel your anger without shame, admitting you want something more than what you've allowed yourself to reach for, and giving yourself permission to take up the space your spirit was always meant to occupy without apology. And you will notice, at first, the guilt will come like a ghost, reminding you that you're breaking the rules of your past, that you might lose people who only loved the version of you who kept herself hidden to make them comfortable. And that is true. You might lose the roles you played to keep your place in rooms where your soul was suffocating. But what you gain is your life, and every time you speak your truth, honor your needs, or choose your boundaries, you stitch yourself back together, piece by piece, building a new reality where you are not leaking energy to please others, but living aligned with your values, your desires, your heartbeat, and your breath. And here is what no one tells you. When you stop suppressing yourself, you don't become hard. You become real. You don't become selfish. You become whole. And the world around you adjusts, even if it's messy at first, and suddenly, you feel the air in your lungs in a way you haven't felt in years. You taste your coffee fully. You laugh without checking if it's too loud. You stand taller without shrinking in apology. And you realize that every suppression you released was a homecoming to yourself. And this is the real peace you were looking for all along, not the fragile quiet that requires your silence, but the deep, steady calm that comes from choosing yourself without guilt. And today, I want to leave you with this question that could change your life if you let it. Where am I suppressing myself to keep the peace? And what would happen if I chose me instead? Let this be the day you stop dying by 1,000 suppressions and start living by 1,000 small choices that bring you back to your true self again and again. Chapter 3. The courage to come home to yourself. What if home is not a place you run to when life collapses, but the quiet, brave moment you choose your own spirit even when the world around you begs you to abandon yourself. The moment you stop shape-shifting to be loved, the moment you drop the weight of pretending to be someone else just to belong, the moment you choose to sit in a room with your truth without numbing it away, the moment you look in the mirror and say, "This is me, and I am not leaving myself behind again." Because the greatest courage you will ever summon is not to climb mountains or break ceilings, but to sit with yourself without judgment and say, "I am coming home," and let that homecoming be messy, tender, and wildly honest. Because the world will teach you to abandon yourself, to be accepted, to hustle for worthiness, to shrink your spirit to avoid making others uncomfortable. But every time you silence your desires to keep the peace, every time you betray your voice to gain approval, every time you tolerate what breaks your spirit to avoid being alone, you lose another piece of yourself in the process. And that grief is heavier than loneliness, heavier than rejection, heavier than failure, because nothing hurts more than betraying yourself for scraps of belonging. And the moment you decide to come home to yourself is the moment you become free. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you are no longer fighting yourself while fighting the world. And you will discover that coming home to yourself is not a destination you reach one day, but a decision you make moment by moment. To pause before you say yes to something that feels like a no in your gut. To breathe before you swallow your truth. To walk away from conversations that drain your spirit. To forgive yourself for the years you spent abandoning yourself. To learn to sit with shame when it arises and say, "You do not define me." Because shame is the lie that says you are unworthy, unlovable, unredeemable. But the truth is that your spirit has never been broken, only buried under the expectations you absorbed, the wounds you inherited, and the fears that whispered, "You're too much," or "You're not enough." And choosing to come home to yourself is an act of spiritual reclamation, an act of honoring the divine spark within you that has always been enough. And as you begin to walk yourself home, you will find that you lose people who only loved the version of you that abandoned yourself for their comfort. And you will grieve those losses, but you will also find your people, the ones who love your wholeness, your too muchness, your radiant spirit, and you will realize that you are not too much. You were just in rooms that asked you to be small. And as you keep coming home, you will notice the moments you want to run away from your truth because it feels too big, too scary, too unknown. But you will stay. And in that staying, you will discover a sacred intimacy with your own soul, a friendship with yourself that is deeper than anything you've known. And you will realize that home was never outside of you, never in their validation, never in your achievements, but in the quiet moments you choose your spirit, in the choices you make to honor your boundaries, in the laughter that bubbles up when you are fully yourself, in the tears you let fall without shame, in the courage to begin again every day. Because this is what it means to come home to yourself, to stop abandoning yourself, to reclaim the lost parts, to remember you are already enough, and to live each day as an act of choosing you, again and again, because you are worth coming home to. And the world needs your wholeness more than it needs your perfection. So let today be the day you whisper, "I am coming home," and let that choice be your quiet revolution. Chapter 4. Boundaries are bridges. They never told us that saying no was how we say yes to ourselves. That drawing a line is not the start of war, but the quiet opening of a doorway back into our own lives. Yet we fear it like exile, terrified that the moment we say, "I can't take this call right now," or "This is not okay with me," the world will abandon us. And so we keep betraying ourselves in the name of keeping the peace while wars rage inside our bodies. Stress flooding our veins, resentment building under the surface like an unspoken scream. And we wonder why we feel so disconnected from our own spirit, so tired, so heavy, so lost, until the day we realize that boundaries are not walls but bridges. That when we say, "This is my limit," we are not pushing people away, but inviting in the ones who can love us as we truly are. That when we say, "No, I can't do that," we are not failing others, but choosing to honor the life we are meant to live. And in this moment of realization, something changes. Like the tightening in your chest loosening, like a single breath that finally feels yours. As you see that every yes that was really a no was an abandonment, a tiny betrayal, a leak in your spirit, and every no that is true is a declaration. I'm here. I matter. I am allowed to exist fully. And you remember that day. You said yes to something you didn't want to do just to avoid the discomfort of saying no. And you remember how your body felt heavy, how your smile felt fake, how you needed to recover from being around people you had to pretend for. And now, you begin to understand that boundaries are not selfish. They are sacred. They are the architecture of a life that honors your energy, your time, your peace, and your dreams. That each boundary is a bridge back to yourself. That people who truly love you will adjust, and those who can't may drift away. And that's okay, because you are no longer willing to betray yourself to be chosen by people who only love the version of you that is convenient for them. And you feel the fear rise when you imagine the first no you need to say, maybe to your boss, your partner, your family, or your friend. And it shakes your body because you were taught that love is earned through self-abandonment, that worth is measured by sacrifice. But you are ready now, ready to walk the bridge back to yourself, ready to learn that your energy is a currency you get to spend consciously, ready to discover that saying no to what drains you is what gives you the space to say yes to what sets your soul on fire. And you will learn that boundaries are not conversations you have just once, but living, breathing practices. You tend to, that you will wobble, sometimes overextend, sometimes retract too harshly, but you will adjust, and you will learn, and you will grow, and you will see that you don't need to explain your no to everyone, that a simple, clear, kind boundary is enough, and you will find that as you begin to live with boundaries, you begin to live lighter, freer, more honest, and more alive. And in this chapter of your life, you will come to know deeply that every time you choose to honor your boundaries, you are choosing yourself, rewriting your worth, and building a life that feels like yours. And so I ask you now, as you close your eyes tonight, where in your life are you ready to build a bridge back to yourself with the word no? And will you let yourself find out how good it feels to stand in your own light, unwavering, whole, and free? Chapter 5. The weight we carry isn't ours. You didn't even notice when it was strapped to your back, did you? The expectations, the shame, the shoulds, the generational guilt, the rules of who you're supposed to be in this world layer by layer, one invisible stone at a time, placed on your shoulders by parents who meant well but were afraid, by teachers who measured your worth with grades, by friends who feared your growth, by a society that told you to be small to be safe. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking, "Is this mine to carry?" And instead just leaned forward, tired, under a weight you never agreed to bear, moving through life with a quiet heaviness that became normal. This weight is the unspoken agreement to live by other people's stories about who you should be, to keep the peace at the cost of your own aliveness, to dim your voice so others feel comfortable, to sacrifice your joy to uphold traditions that no longer serve you, to hold your breath every time you want to say no, and to smile when you want to cry, and you wonder why your soul feels so heavy, why you wake up already exhausted, why you feel disconnected from yourself, even when your life looks fine on the outside. Today, I am asking you to pause and open that invisible backpack and take out each item, one by one, and ask, whose is this? That fear of being judged if you speak your truth. Did you learn that from a mother who was never allowed to have a voice? That belief that rest must be earned, Did you learn that from a father who believed his worth was only in his work? That fear of disappointing others if you choose your own path? Did you learn that from a culture that taught you love is conditional? You don't have to carry these anymore. Choosing yourself begins with choosing to put down what was never yours. Choosing to stand without the weight of others' expectations crushing your spirit. Choosing to return the guilt, the shame, the fear, the generational stories to their rightful owners. Choosing to live unburdened. It will feel terrifying at first, like you're betraying everyone, like you're letting them down, like you're doing something wrong by prioritizing your peace. But let me tell you the truth. The real betrayal is abandoning yourself for a life that keeps you small and resentful. You were not born to carry everyone else's weight. You were born to walk your path freely, to laugh without guilt, to rest without shame, to love without conditions, to speak without trembling, to live without apology. There is a moment, a precise moment, when you realize the weight is not yours, and your body sighs, your heart softens, and for the first time in years, you breathe a full breath without guilt. This is the moment you begin to live lighter, to walk taller, to take up your rightful space in this world, not as who others need you to be, but as who you truly are. This is the power of choosing you, and every time you feel the heaviness returning, you get to ask again, is this mine? And put it down gently, bravely, layer by layer, until you remember what it feels like to be free. Because you deserve to walk through this life unburdened, and the world needs the version of you that is no longer drowning under the weight of everything you were never meant to carry. Are you ready to put it down? Chapter 6. The Fear of Being Seen. Have you ever felt that tightness in your chest when it's your turn to speak up in a meeting? Or that sudden urge to shrink back when someone gives you a genuine compliment, and deep down, you ache to be seen, to have your truth witnessed, but the thought of exposure terrifies you more than being invisible ever did. Like standing on a stage under a spotlight with your soul naked for the world to judge, and you wonder why, if your spirit craves visibility, your body trembles at the very idea of being truly seen, because somewhere along the way, maybe in a classroom where your curiosity was mocked, or at a family table where your feelings were dismissed, you learn to swallow your words, to lower your gaze, to dim your light just enough to avoid the searing heat of judgment and rejection, telling yourself it was safer to be overlooked than to be looked at and misunderstood. And yet here you are, craving to be fully alive, craving to be chosen, craving to be seen in the rawness of who you are. And so this fear, this hidden resistance, isn't about attention, it's about survival. Because being seen means letting go of the masks you crafted so carefully to fit in. The persona you built so people would love you, or at least tolerate you. And it feels like death to let that go. Because your nervous system still remembers the sting of ridicule, the icy silence of disapproval, the betrayal of being told you were too much, too loud, too emotional, too different. So you learn to edit yourself before speaking, to weigh every word in your mind before letting it leave your lips, to overthink every post before you share your truth, to shrink your dreams, so they wouldn't threaten the comfort zones of others. And in that constant shrinking, you lost yourself in fragments, bit by bit. And you told yourself it was safer to be small. But what if I told you that this fear of being seen is a signpost, a sacred mirror reflecting your readiness to step into the fullness of your own life? Because it's not just fear, it's the edge where your growth is calling, the doorway where your truth is waiting, the space where your voice can finally echo into the world without apology. And the truth is, every person you admire once trembled too. Every voice that inspires you once quivered before it found its cadence. And your fear of being seen is not a signal to retreat, but an invitation to rise, to understand that yes, not everyone will celebrate your truth. Some will misunderstand it, some will reject it, and some will judge it. But those reactions have nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their own unhealed wounds. And every time you choose to speak your truth anyway, every time you let your soul breathe through your words, you choose yourself. You reclaim the energy you spent hiding. You stand taller within your own life, and visibility then becomes an act of service. Not just to others, but to your own spirit, reminding you that your story matters. Your perspective matters. Your existence matters. And it's okay to be seen trembling, to be seen unfinished, to be seen imperfect, because you are not here to live a performance. You are here to live a life that feels like yours. And the more you practice visibility, the less power the fear will hold. So I ask you today, in the softest yet clearest voice, what truth have you been hiding that is ready to be seen? What dream have you silenced that is ready to be spoken aloud? And are you willing to let yourself be seen, not for the version you think will be accepted, but for the wholeness of who you are? Trembling, powerful, messy, radiant, alive. Because the moment you let yourself be seen, you become free. And the world, hungry for authenticity, finally sees the light you've been carrying all along. Chapter 7. Choosing rest in a world that worships hustle. There is a moment, maybe at 2 a.m. when your eyes burn and your bones are tired, that you wonder if this constant striving is what life is meant to feel like. And you tell yourself, I'll rest when I'm done. But what if that moment never comes? And what if the truth is that rest itself is the doorway you're looking for, the place where you finally come home to yourself? We live in a culture that ties our worth to how exhausted we are, or we praise the dark circles under our eyes as badges of honor and wear burnout like a twisted trophy. But deep inside, your soul is craving a different way, a softer way, that still holds strength, a life where you are not just surviving the days, but actually living them, present and awake to the miracle of now. I remember the first time I chose rest instead of pushing through. It was a small rebellion, like quietly turning off the noise when the world demanded another post, another meeting, another checkbox ticked on a to-do list that never loved me back. And in that silence, I heard the quiet whisper of life itself reminding me that I am not a machine. We hustle because we think it will earn us safety, applause, and approval. But often it's the frightened child inside of us, desperate to be seen as enough, that fuels the endless doing. And the cruel irony is we spend so much time trying to prove our worth that we never feel it. Rest is not laziness. It is a radical act of trust, a spiritual practice that says, I believe I'm enough even when I'm still. Choosing rest is choosing to trust life's seasons, to honor your natural rhythms, to reclaim the energy the constant hustle steals, and to build a relationship with your body that is rooted in care rather than punishment. There is a sacred power in laying your phone down, in taking a slow walk without tracking the steps, in letting yourself nap without guilt, and in creating space to listen to the quiet wisdom that only arrives when you stop running from yourself. You begin to see that you are more creative when you rest, more loving when you are nourished, and more powerful when your energy is sourced from alignment rather than adrenaline. Choosing rest is also choosing boundaries, saying no to what drains you, stepping back from people who celebrate your exhaustion but not your peace, and refusing to buy into the cultural lie that you must constantly be on to matter. It will feel uncomfortable at first. The stillness will bring up the parts of you that feel unworthy without productivity to hide behind. But as you sit with yourself, you will discover that rest is where your truest self speaks, where your spirit breathes, where your intuition wakes up, and where your real life quietly begins. If you are waiting for permission to slow down, let this be it. You do not have to earn your worth by emptying yourself for everyone else. And you do not have to hustle your way into deserving rest. The world may not applaud you for resting, but your body will, your spirit will, And your future self will thank you for having the courage to live differently in a world that worships exhaustion. Rest is rebellion, and in a world that tells you to sacrifice yourself for productivity, choosing to rest is choosing yourself. And that choice will ripple out into every part of your life, your relationships, and your dreams, transforming your days from a race to a sacred dance with time, reminding you that you were never meant to be a machine. You were meant to be fully, beautifully alive. Chapter 8. The Myth of Waiting for Permission. Who are you waiting for to say you're ready? Maybe it's a boss, a partner, your family, or even some invisible authority whose nod you feel you need before stepping fully into your own life. And that waiting, that endless pause, quietly steals your power every day. It's the silent thief of your dreams, whispering that you're not quite enough, not quite prepared, not quite worthy. And here's the truth that changes everything. No one has to give you permission to be the person you're meant to be, to pursue what sets your soul on fire, to walk paths that feel scary but alive. The idea that you need external approval is a myth, a story we've absorbed from a culture obsessed with rules, comparisons, and perfectionism, but the only real permission you'll ever need is the one you give yourself, the moment you decide that waiting is no longer an option. Imagine the weight lifted when you stop searching for green lights and start giving yourself a green light that burns brighter than any outside validation, because that light is rooted in self-trust, in fierce commitment to your own growth, and in the realization that life's richest moments happen when you dare to start before you feel ready, when you embrace the messy, imperfect unfolding of your own becoming. Every great story of transformation began not with a perfect plan, but with a courageous choice to move forward despite fear, doubt, or uncertainty. So, ask yourself, what if the thing you're waiting for is actually the barrier you put in your own way? What if readiness is less about perfect timing and more about the willingness to jump, learn, and grow while in the air? Waiting for permission keeps you stuck in a loop of not enough that no one else can break but you. The first step toward freedom is claiming your right to start now, to say yes to your dreams, your voice, your power, no matter how shaky or small that first step feels. This chapter invites you to dismantle the chains of approval addiction, to stop giving your power away to anyone else's expectations or judgments, and instead cultivate radical self-approval, fierce self-love, and relentless courage. Because when you choose you without waiting, you send a shockwave of possibility into your life, opening doors that years of hesitation never will. And you teach the world a vital lesson too, that you are the authority of your own story, the architect of your own destiny, and that waiting for permission was never a requirement. It was a myth holding you hostage. Now, what will you choose? Will you wait another day, another moment? Or will you step boldly into the power that's been inside you all along and say, I'm ready, I choose me? Chapter 9. Healing your inner critic. Have you ever noticed that voice in your head? The one that sneaks in during quiet moments, whispering that you're not good enough, not smart enough, or simply not worthy of happiness. That relentless inner critic can feel like a shadow stalking your every move, turning your achievements into flukes and your dreams into impossible fantasies. But here's the truth no one tells you. That voice isn't the real you. It's a survival mechanism, a learned habit born from pain, fear, and past wounds trying to protect you from failure or rejection by keeping you small. I remember a time when I too was trapped in that suffocating loop of self-doubt, feeling like a prisoner in my own mind, convinced I'd never escape the trap of not enough. Yet, what transformed me wasn't silencing that voice, but befriending it, listening deeply to what it's really trying to say beneath the harsh words, understanding its roots in childhood fears, and then gently rewriting the narrative it's been forced to tell. Healing your inner critic isn't about brutal self-affirmations or toxic positivity. It's about radical compassion and curiosity, peeling back the layers of shame and fear to reveal the vulnerable heart beneath. When you begin to treat that inner voice like an old, frightened child instead of a ruthless judge, something miraculous happens. You reclaim your power, and the critic becomes a coach, a guardian who encourages growth rather than punishes mistakes. This journey is messy and non-linear, filled with setbacks and breakthroughs, but every step toward healing is a choice to prioritize your peace over perfection. Imagine looking in the mirror and hearing kindness instead of criticism, seeing your worth clearly even when the world feels harsh. The challenge is to confront the stories your inner critic tells you, not by fighting harder, but by shining light on the shadows it hides in, embracing your imperfections as the unique threads of your human tapestry. Remember, the voice that doubts you today once protected you from unbearable pain yesterday that no longer needs to lead. So, what if you began each day asking, what does my inner critic need me to understand? Rather than, how can I prove it wrong? This shift invites healing, not war, transformation, not suppression. Healing your inner critic is an act of choosing you, a declaration that your truth matters more than the lies of fear. So now I ask you, what if the voice inside your head is not your enemy, but a guide calling for your love? How will you answer that call today? Chapter 10. The Power of Being Unapologetic. What would happen if you simply stopped apologizing for who you are? Imagine the weight you carry every time you say, sorry, for your feelings, your opinions, your presence, those endless apologies that silently tell the world, I'm not enough, even when you are. This chapter is your invitation to shed that burden and step into unapologetic living, where your truth isn't something to be hidden or softened, but celebrated boldly, without hesitation or excuse. Think about the last time you apologized just to keep the peace, to avoid rocking the boat, or to fit in. How did that feel inside? Often, it leaves a hollow ache, a quiet surrender of your power that you barely notice, but that chips away at your self-worth day by day. Being unapologetic doesn't mean being reckless or dismissive of others. Rather, it means honoring your authentic self with such clarity and courage that you no longer seek permission to exist fully. It means choosing your voice over silence, your needs over pleasing, your path over conformity. When you claim this power, doors open not because you demand them, but because your energy shifts. You move from a place of scarcity and fear to one of abundance and self-respect. The world needs your unapologetic presence, your quirks, your passions, your boundaries, your messy, beautiful humanity. And the moment you stop apologizing for these, you ignite a fierce light inside that others can't help but see and be drawn to. This journey is not without its challenges. Society trains us to shrink, to dim, to constantly say, sorry, even when it's not our fault. So the first step is awareness, catching yourself mid-apology and asking, am I really wrong, or am I just afraid to stand tall? Then commies. The practice of rewriting your internal script, replacing sorry with thank you for listening, or this is important to me, or simply embracing the silence instead of filling it with regret. It's about learning that your value isn't negotiable, and that true connection happens when you show up as your whole, unapologetic self. Imagine the liberation in moving through your day without the need to soften your edges, without the invisible chains of guilt and shame. How much energy would you reclaim? How much joy could you uncover if you treated your own existence as a gift rather than a burden? The power of being unapologetic is a radical act of self-love and a revolutionary stance in a world that often asks you to shrink. It is a choice to live so authentically that even your mistakes become part of your brilliance. So, what would happen if you stopped apologizing for who you are? What new doors would open? What new people would you meet? What new dreams would you dare to chase? This chapter is your call to rise, to be unapologetically you, and to let that truth echo loudly in every corner of your life. Chapter 11. Loving yourself when you're a mess. Have you ever felt like you're falling apart? Like the world's weight has slammed down on your chest, and all you want to do is hide. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispers, choose yourself anyway. Healing isn't a neat, tidy process. It's messy, unpredictable, and filled with setbacks that test your patience and self-love. This chapter is about those moments when life feels like a storm and you're soaked to the bone, broken but still breathing, still daring to choose you. Imagine a woman named Sarah who had just lost her job. Her long-term relationship was crumbling, and her anxiety was spiraling into sleepless nights filled with doubt and self-criticism. Most would say this is the time to throw in the towel, to stop trying, but Sarah did the exact opposite. She chose herself flawed, tired, overwhelmed. She chose to show up for herself even when she felt undeserving. Or think of Michael, a father juggling grief after losing his mother while trying to hold his family together. His mess was loud and chaotic, yet in the middle of that chaos, he gave himself permission to cry, to rest, to fail, and then to try again. Choosing yourself when you're a mess means embracing your imperfections and loving your brokenness with the same fierceness you reserve for your successes. It means sitting with your pain without rushing to fix it, allowing your tears to water the seeds of self-compassion. So often, society paints healing as a linear upward climb, as if you must fix yourself perfectly before being worthy. But true choosing yourself happens in the middle of the storm, not after it passes. It's saying, I am enough, even when your mind screams you're not. It's leaning into your vulnerability without shame, knowing that your mess is a sacred part of your story. This chapter invites you to hold space for your chaotic emotions, to silence the inner critic that mocks your struggle, and to replace self-judgment with kindness. Because loving yourself when you're a mess is the ultimate act of courage, the purest form of power. It is messy, it is beautiful, and it is the beginning of true transformation. What if you stopped waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect version of yourself to love who you are, now chaos, cracks, and all? When you embrace the mess, you open the door to deep healing and the freedom to choose you every single day. So, here's the truth that sticks in the heart. You don't have to be fixed to be worthy of love, especially your own. Will you choose yourself today, exactly as you are? Chapter 12. Letting go without losing yourself. Letting go is one of the most profound acts of self-love. Yet it feels paradoxical. How can releasing something mean gaining yourself? Many of us hold on to people, identities, and past versions of ourselves like lifelines, fearing that if we let go, we'll lose who we are. But in truth, holding on tightly often means we're living fragments of a story that no longer fits our present, shackling our growth and dimming our inner light. Think of the grief you feel when a chapter closes. Not just the pain, but the trembling uncertainty of stepping into the unknown. That grief is real and necessary. It honors what once was. Yet, if we only stay mourning, we miss the gift hidden beneath it, the opportunity to reclaim our power and rewrite our story on our own terms. Letting go is a conscious decision to release what weighs you down, whether it's toxic relationships, limiting beliefs, or old versions of yourself you've outgrown but haven't yet said goodbye to. It's not about erasing your past, but honoring it with gratitude and courage as you turn toward the future. When you release, you create space to breathe, to grow, and to choose anew. The hardest part is often the fear that letting go means being alone, vulnerable, or starting over from scratch. But real freedom doesn't come from clinging to what's familiar. It comes from trusting yourself enough to stand strong in the discomfort of change. In that space, you rediscover your core, the true you beyond roles, expectations, and stories you've been told. This is where you find your resilience, your voice, and your light. The pain of letting go is temporary, but the power you reclaim lasts a lifetime. So today, ask yourself, what are you holding on to that no longer serves you? What would happen if you loosened your grip and allowed yourself to move forward unburdened? Letting go isn't losing yourself. It's the most radical way to choose yourself. Chapter 13. Choosing Joy Without Guilt. Why do we feel guilty for joy? Imagine walking into a room filled with laughter, light, and celebration, but instead of joining in freely, you hold back, quietly weighed down by a shadow of shame, an invisible voice whispering, "Who are you to feel this happy when others are struggling?" This subtle, almost sneaky guilt steals the brightness from our moments of joy and convinces us that happiness is a privilege reserved for others, not ourselves. The truth is, choosing joy is not selfish. It is an act of radical self-acceptance and rebellion against a world that often equates worthiness with struggle, sacrifice, or pain. We grow up absorbing messages that tell us to earn our happiness, to delay gratification, or to feel guilty if we enjoy life too much, especially when the people around us are hurting. But joy is not a zero-sum game. It is not diminished by others' hardships. Instead, joy is a powerful fuel that replenishes our spirit, strengthens resilience, and empowers us to show up more fully for ourselves and those we love. This chapter invites you to confront that guilt head-on, to question the stories that make you feel undeserving of lightness, and to rewrite your relationship with happiness. What if joy were not a distraction, but a compass pointing toward your deepest truth? What if allowing yourself to feel joy, even in small, seemingly insignificant ways, was a radical act of self-love and healing? When you choose joy, you are reclaiming your power to define your own life experience rather than being tethered to the weight of others' pain or societal expectations. This doesn't mean ignoring suffering or avoiding hard emotions. It means embracing joy as part of the full spectrum of your human experience, giving yourself permission to celebrate, laugh, dance, rest, and savor moments that feed your soul. Choosing joy is also an invitation to practice gratitude, not as a forced cliché, but as a genuine recognition of the good that exists alongside challenges. It opens the door to mindfulness, helping you anchor yourself in the present, where joy can be found in the smallest details: a warm cup of coffee, a shared smile, the breeze on your skin. This chapter challenges you to identify the hidden beliefs that keep you stuck in guilt and to gently dismantle them through compassion and awareness. It offers practical tools, journaling prompts to explore your feelings around joy and guilt, reflection questions to identify when and why you suppress happiness, and affirmations that remind you joy is your birthright. Remember, the guilt that clouds your joy often comes from deep-seated fears: fear of being judged, fear of being seen as frivolous, or fear that your happiness might somehow take away from others. But what if embracing your joy could inspire others to do the same? What if your radiant presence, fueled by genuine happiness, became a beacon of hope and healing in your community? Choosing joy without guilt is not just about feeling good. It is about breaking cycles of self-denial and reclaiming your authentic self with courage and grace. So today, ask yourself, what joy have I been holding back out of guilt? What would it feel like to fully embrace joy as an essential, sacred part of my journey? The power to choose joy lies in your hands, and with it comes the freedom to live a life rich with love, light, and unapologetic happiness. Will you let yourself be joyful? Will you choose you? Chapter 14. Owning Your Enoughness. Have you ever caught yourself chasing an invisible finish line, believing that if only you achieve one more goal, earn one more compliment, or fix one more flaw, then, finally, you'll be enough? That endless chase for enoughness is like trying to fill a cup with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it never feels full. The truth is, enoughness isn't a trophy to win or a box to check. It's the quiet, fierce knowing that you are inherently worthy right now, exactly as you are. Imagine for a moment the weight you've been carrying, the pressure to prove yourself, to earn love, to measure up against impossible standards set by society, by others, or worse, by your own inner critic. This weight dulls your spirit and steals your joy. But what if you could lay that burden down? What if owning your enoughness meant embracing your scars as part of your story, your quirks as your unique signature, your voice as powerful even when it shakes? Owning enoughness is radical because it requires you to stop running and start resting in the truth that your value is not based on what you do, but simply on who you are. This doesn't mean complacency or stopping growth. It means stepping out of the scarcity mindset that says you're not enough and into a space of fierce self-respect and acceptance that fuels genuine growth. The journey to enoughness invites you to notice the stories you tell yourself, the harsh judgments and shoulds that chain you and question their origin. Whose voice are you really listening to? When you begin to dismantle these beliefs, you find an inner sanctuary where enoughness blooms like a wildflower, imperfect, resilient, and free. And here's the transformational truth. Owning your enoughness doesn't just change how you see yourself. It rewires your relationship with the world. You stop seeking external validation because you no longer need it to feel whole. You set boundaries effortlessly because you respect your own limits. You take bold steps forward, not from fear or desperation, but from grounded confidence. This chapter isn't a pep talk. It's an invitation to rise up and claim your birthright. To be unapologetically, unconditionally, undeniably enough, not someday in the future, but right now. So I ask you, what would it feel like to wake up every morning knowing you already own your enoughness? What would change in your life if you stopped chasing and started being? The endless race ends here, and freedom begins with the simple, profound act of choosing yourself as enough. Chapter 15. Choosing you in relationships. You don't have to abandon yourself to love others. This is the quiet revolution waiting for you in every relationship you have, whether it's romantic, familial, or friendship. Too often, we've been taught that love requires sacrifice, that to be loved we must shrink, mute, or reshape ourselves to fit someone else's mold. But what if real love is born from choosing you first, knowing your worth, and honoring your needs even as you open your heart to another? Imagine the last time you felt yourself dissolve in a connection, losing your voice or your boundaries to keep the peace or gain approval. How hollow that felt inside, like watering a garden, but forgetting to drink yourself. Love built on abandonment is fragile, but love grounded in self-respect and presence blossoms into something fierce and lasting. When you choose you in relationships, you're not rejecting the other person. You're showing up fully with your true colors and your soul's deepest yearnings, inviting others to do the same. This chapter is about reclaiming that power, challenging the belief that caring means losing, and instead embracing the paradox that to truly connect, you must first be whole alone. It's about the art of saying no without guilt, the bravery in setting boundaries that feel like protection rather than punishment, and the grace of holding space for others without sacrificing your own peace. When you stop codependent patterns and self-neglect, relationships shift from draining obligations to energized partnerships where both people thrive. This isn't about selfishness. It's about self-care as radical love, creating a ripple effect that heals old wounds and rewrites the stories of loneliness and rejection you once believed. Choosing you in relationships means asking yourself daily, am I honoring my truth here? Am I speaking my needs? Am I allowing space for growth for myself and for the other? It's about embracing discomfort because growth rarely feels cozy, and knowing that discomfort is a sign you're breaking free from old patterns. You may fear being alone, or fear the other leaving when you finally say what you need. But in that fear lies your growth, your power, your liberation. Because when you choose you, you're not only choosing love, you're choosing authenticity, presence, and a love that can't be faked or forced. And that, in itself, changes everything. So here's the truth to hold. You can love deeply without losing yourself. In fact, that is the only way to love truly. What is one small boundary you can set today that honors you and your heart? How will choosing you in your relationships change the way you show up tomorrow? Chapter 16. The Power of Tiny Choices. Have you ever paused to notice how the smallest decisions, what to say, where to turn, which thought to entertain, quietly build the architecture of your entire life? I remember a friend who was drowning in overwhelm, feeling like change was impossible, until she realized that the moment she chose to drink an extra glass of water each morning, the ripple effect began. Suddenly, she had more energy, then a little more confidence, and soon enough, her life shifted in ways she hadn't dared imagine. This is the hidden truth about transformation. It rarely bursts in like a tidal wave, but seeps in gently through the cracks, one tiny choice at a time. We often wait for grand moments, for thunderclaps of motivation or earth-shattering inspiration to jolt us forward. But the universe doesn't always work that way. Instead, it offers us countless invitations, micro-decisions that seem trivial but are actually the building blocks of profound change. Choosing to say no to a toxic request, deciding to spend 5 minutes in stillness instead of scrolling, or simply telling yourself, I'm enough, just once more. These are the quiet rebellions against a life lived on autopilot. Yet, because these choices feel so small, we underestimate their power, discounting their cumulative effect. What if every single day, your tiny choices compounded like compound interest, growing your confidence, resilience, and self-love in exponential ways? What if the subtle habit of pausing before reacting, or the deliberate act of kindness toward yourself, became the seeds that sprouted a new, unstoppable version of you? The power lies not in perfection or radical overhaul, but in persistence with these small, soulful decisions. The challenge is to stop waiting for permission from fate or the right moment, and instead to trust that your present choice, no matter how minuscule, matters deeply. It's in the collection of these seemingly insignificant moments that your story turns, where the ordinary builds the extraordinary. So today, the question isn't how do I change my entire life at once, but rather, which tiny choice can I make right now to honor myself? Because when you choose you, even in the smallest ways, you are authoring a legacy of self-respect and inner power that no external force can take away. Your life is a mosaic of these tiny choices, each one a brushstroke painting the masterpiece only you can create. What tiny choice will you make today that your future self will thank you for? The power is in your hands, one small step at a time. Chapter 17. Choosing your voice. Your voice is your freedom, the thread that weaves your inner world into the tapestry of your outer life. Yet how often do we silence it, soften it, or lose it altogether to please others or avoid conflict? Imagine a time you wanted to speak up, maybe in a meeting, a family dinner, or even just a casual conversation, but your words got caught somewhere between your heart and your lips, buried under a tidal wave of fear, doubt, or the haunting belief that your thoughts weren't important enough. This hesitation is not weakness, but a symptom of years of conditioning. Moments where your voice was dismissed, ignored, or overshadowed by louder, more dominant voices around you. Choosing your voice means standing at the edge of that familiar silence and stepping into a space where your truth matters, where your feelings, opinions, and dreams are valid and worthy of expression. It's not about shouting the loudest or arguing the hardest. It's about authenticity, about the quiet power of speaking your truth, even when your voice trembles, about honoring the small, everyday choices where you say, no, yes, or I need help instead of I'm fine. This chapter invites you to reflect on the stories you've told yourself about your voice. Was it ever heard? Was it ever crushed? Were you ever told to be quiet, nice, or too much? Reclaiming your voice is a healing journey that blends courage with compassion, because it asks you not only to speak, but to listen to yourself first and foremost. When you speak your voice, you open the door to deeper connections and clearer boundaries, aligning your inner values with your external actions. It fuels your creativity, unlocking ideas that have been trapped behind fear of judgment or rejection, and breathes life into dreams postponed for someday. It also transforms how you make decisions. Instead of second-guessing or deferring to others, you become the author of your choices, guided by your intuition and self-respect. Yet choosing your voice isn't always easy. It demands facing uncomfortable emotions like vulnerability, fear of conflict, or even loneliness. It may mean disrupting relationships that thrive on your silence or challenging cultural scripts that equate power with volume rather than presence. But every time you reclaim your voice, you carve out a little more space for your soul to breathe freely, inviting others to do the same. So, I challenge you now. Where in your life are you still silent when you want to speak? What small step can you take today to honor your voice? Whether it's telling a truth, setting a boundary, or sharing a dream. Remember, your voice is not just sound. It's the echo of your freedom, the declaration that you are here, you matter, and you choose yourself. What story will you tell with your voice today? Chapter 18. Becoming the main character of your life. Are you tired of feeling like a background player in your own life? Watching the world unfold as if you're stuck in someone else's story. Maybe you're living on autopilot, caught up in other people's expectations, or trapped by past versions of yourself that don't serve who you truly want to be yet deep inside. A quiet voice whispers that you were meant for more, meant to be the hero of your own journey. Becoming the main character is not about arrogance or ego. It's about reclaiming your narrative with courage and compassion, stepping out from the shadows of self-doubt and fear to stand boldly in your truth. Imagine the scenes of your life as chapters of a novel where you hold the pen and every choice, every moment, is a stroke of your own authorship. It begins with recognizing the scripts you've been handed, the roles you've been assigned by family, society, or even your own mind, and gently rewriting them to fit your authentic self. This transformation is deeply spiritual and psychological, rooted in the awareness that your life is your art, and you are the artist, the storyteller, and the hero all at once. It's about shifting from being reactive to proactive, choosing to live intentionally rather than passively, and understanding that your worth is not tied to anyone else's validation. When you own your story, you start to notice the subtle shifts. Boundaries become easier to set. Your voice grows stronger, and the weight of living up to external standards lifts. You learn to embrace your flaws and failures as essential parts of your growth, not as reasons to shrink away. This chapter challenges you to ask yourself, what narrative have I been living, and what story do I want to tell from here on out? It invites you to break free from the side character syndrome, The habit of letting others' dramas overshadow your own dreams and to step fully into the spotlight of your existence. You are allowed to be complex, vulnerable, and powerful, all at once. This is what makes a protagonist unforgettable. So, take a deep breath and imagine yourself as the hero in your life's movie. What does that look like? What choices would you make differently? How would your daily actions change if you truly believed your story mattered above all else? This is not a distant fantasy, but a present possibility waiting for your permission. The journey to becoming the main character is ongoing. It requires patience, forgiveness, and relentless self-love, but it begins with one brave decision: to stop waiting for life to happen to you and start writing your own script. When you do, every moment becomes charged with meaning. Every challenge a plot twist that adds depth, and every victory a scene that reminds you of your resilience. The question now is simple but profound. Are you ready to stop playing a supporting role and claim the lead in your life story? Chapter 19. Choosing your energy. Energy is currency. It's the invisible force that fuels everything you do, think, and feel. Yet, how often do you pause to notice where yours flows and where it drains? Imagine your energy as the most valuable treasure you possess, a delicate yet powerful current that shapes your reality, your mood, your creativity, and your power to choose yourself. Every day, without even realizing it, you give your energy away to toxic relationships, self-doubt, endless distractions, and obligations that don't serve your soul. The truth is, choosing your energy means consciously deciding what deserves your attention and what doesn't. Because when you guard your energy fiercely, you guard your entire life. Think about that friend who always leaves you feeling drained, or the constant scroll through social media that steals your joy. Those are energy thieves disguised as normal parts of life. But here's the breakthrough. You have the power to redirect this flow. You can choose to spend your energy on nourishing thoughts, uplifting people, and activities that ignite your spirit instead of exhausting it. When you make this shift, it's not selfish, it's self-preservation, it's self-love, it's the radical act of saying, I matter enough to protect my inner fire. This is where spiritual depth meets practical psychology. Energy management is as much about mindset as it is about boundaries. You learn to listen to your body's whispers, fatigue, anxiety, restlessness, and recognize them as signals that your energy needs tending. You begin to prioritize rest, play, creativity, and meaningful connection, because these are the ways you refill your well. And as your energy becomes more intentional, something extraordinary happens. You start attracting experiences and people who respect and elevate your vibe. Your life becomes a reflection of the energy you choose to give. This chapter is your call to rise and take charge of your invisible currency. It's a challenge to stop the unconscious giveaways and start investing in yourself fiercely. So ask yourself, where is your energy flowing right now? And is it carrying you toward the life you deserve or away from it? Choosing your energy is the ultimate act of choosing you. And once you master this, nothing else will ever feel quite so powerful. Chapter 20. The choice you make every day. There's a quiet, often invisible moment every day when you stand at a crossroads, not with grand fanfare, but in the simple, ordinary choices you make, whether to listen to your own voice or the noise around you, to honor your needs or sacrifice them again, to show up for yourself or retreat into old patterns of self-doubt and people-pleasing. This moment, repeated hundreds of times, is where the real power lies, the power of choosing you, not as a heroic once-and-for-all victory, but as a daily, fierce, humble practice that asks you to rise, even when tired, to say yes to your own worth when the world offers distraction and demands compliance, to reclaim your energy when it's drained by guilt or obligation, and to trust that each small act of self-love stitches together the fabric of a life lived authentically and unapologetically. It's here, in these everyday decisions, choosing rest over burnout, kindness over criticism, courage over comfort, that you build a fortress around your soul, the kind no one can breach because it's crafted with intention and respect for your true self. This is not about perfection or an endless struggle, but about compassion for your journey, embracing the messages and the setbacks, knowing that choosing you doesn't mean being selfish, but rather being whole, so that from this place of wholeness, you can give without losing yourself, lead without wearing a mask, and create a life that feels aligned with your deepest values and dreams. And when the world whispers that you should shrink, settle, or forget who you are, you remember this daily practice, this quiet rebellion, this radical act of self-preservation and self-celebration, and you stand firm, choosing yourself again, choosing your peace, your growth, your joy, your light, because in the end, the greatest revolution you can lead is the one that begins within, with the choice to say, I am here. I am enough. I choose me. So, what will you choose right? Now, today, and tomorrow? Will you rise once more and make the powerful choice to stand in your own truth every single day?